And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hi there, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook. It is Thursday, May 9th, 2024, and this outlook will be for Friday into Saturday, but we do start out with the sea ice on this Thursday afternoon, and we have the ice in various raggedness openings. They have polynias and things that have opened here in the central northern half of the Bering Sea, areas of Norton Sound and along the Yukon-Kuskokwim deltas, where there's still the shore-fast ice holding in those areas. But nevertheless, with the colder temperatures that have been in this region, there has been actually a little ice development, and that should continue because we're not looking for temperatures to really warm within this region coming up here through the weekend. So while things may shift around a bit and open here or there, there's still the potential for some additional ice development. But further south, things are, at least the water remains open there in Bristol Bay. And looking at a weather system that's coming through later tonight, we have a low crossing the eastern Aleutians. It'll work its way up along the Alaska Peninsula into the western Gulf Friday into early Saturday. The stronger system that came onshore this Thursday afternoon between Yakutat and Cape Suckling the energy from that moisture will continue to spread northward, and then we're having an area of low pressure just work its way eastward across northwest Canada. For Friday, high pressure ridge will nudge up into the Panhandle, begin to dry things out, especially the southern, southwestern parts of the Panhandle, Sitka down through Ketchikan. But this next low coming up along the Alaska Peninsula will have some gale force winds, at least gale force gusts with it as it works its way northeastward, along with some areas of rain and then some snow in the coastal mountains. And for Saturday, during the day, we find the low located just east of Kodiak Island in the western Gulf with this front extending eastward. Looks like some drier weather will occur Friday afternoon into Saturday in the Panhandle, but then this front will likely bring some more showers into the Panhandle later this weekend. And there is a low that will be passing south of the Aleutian chain in the North Pacific as we go into mid-afternoon on Saturday. So winds will definitely be coming down from what they were this Thursday. On Friday, we expect south winds 15 to 20 knots, Stevens Passage through Lynn Canal, waves 2-3 feet. Northwest winds to 10 knots there out of Ketchikan, Metlakatla, Dixon Entrance. Offshore winds here as we get into the areas of the Gulf within 15 nautical miles of shore. Generally a westerly component, 10 to 15 knots with swells of 7 to 8 feet. Saturday, we expect winds in the inner channels to be north-northwest around 10 knots with waves just a couple of feet at best. For the Gulf Coast areas within nearshore, for the nearshore waters, look for a south to southeast wind, 15 knots south of Sitka, 20 southeast winds becoming easterly gales to 35 knots there at Cape Suckling, and swells generally 5 to 7 feet south of Sitka, and building 9 to as high as maybe 13 to 15 feet off of Cape Suckling. For Friday, winds within Hinchinbrook Entrance and Prince William Sound southeast to 20 knots. Easterly winds to 20 knots, upper Cook Inlet. Strongest winds will be down off the Kenai coast, and at the entrance of Cook Inlet, look for east-southeast winds to 30 knots with swells 8 to 9 feet. Saturday, with that next low creeping upward along the western Gulf, we will find winds as strong as 35 to 40 knots outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance with swells of 14 to 15 feet, 30 knots within Prince William Sound with waves of 6 to 7 feet, and then northeast winds 25 to 30 knots down the length of Cook Inlet with swells as high as 8 feet there off of Anchor Point and down toward the entrance of Cook Inlet. Friday's winds will be east to southeast, 25 to 30 knots in the vicinity of Kodiak Island, and as we go down through the middle portion of the Alaska Peninsula, southeast to east winds 25 to 30 knots, swells 10 to 11 feet on the North Pacific side, around 4 feet on the Bering side. For Saturday, winds variable 10 knots within Shelikof Strait, south winds there at 15 knots with 10-foot swells off of Akiak. And then generally northwest winds around 15 to 20 knots, a little stronger 20 to 25 knots there around Cold Bay, False Pass, with waves 7 feet or so on the North Pacific side and as high as 4 to 8 feet, especially as you get there north of Cold Bay. The eastern Aleutians on Friday will see westerly winds of 25 knots, turning more north-northwesterly around 25 knots through the middle Aleutians, and then back toward the northeast to east at 20 to 25 knots west of Adak. For Sunday, look for northeast winds here across a good portion of the eastern Aleutians, 15 to 20 knots, but as high as 25 knots as we get from around Atka and Adak westward toward Kiska, and waves generally running 7-8 feet on the North Pacific side and maybe 8 to 9 feet on the Bering side. Look for 35-knot northeasterly gales around the Pribilovs as that low center passes up into the central portion of the Alaska Peninsula. Easterly winds to 30 knots within Bristol Bay, northeast winds to 25 knots out of Kuskokwim Bay. And then kind of a split here, northeast winds 10 to 15 knots along the lower Yukon Delta, but southwesterly 10 knots there within the wider expanse of Norton Sound. And then winds on Saturday will generally be more out of the north-northwest across the region, as high as 25 knots here within Kuskokwim Bay. Generally north winds 20 knots, not just at St. Paul, St. George up to St. Matthew, but along the lower Yukon coastline. And we expect temperatures to stay chilly here, generally below freezing for high temperatures, because there's really no way for that air to warm at this time until we get more of a pattern shift. And then down through the Bering Strait on Friday, we expect north winds to 15 knots, Wales, Port Clarence to Gamble and Savunga at St. Lawrence. Northwest winds 15 knots in the lower Chukchi Sea, flipping around to southeast winds offshore flow to 10 knots, Point Lay on up to Utqiagvik, and then kind of a mixed variable wind 5 to 10 knots from the central and eastern Arctic coast. On Saturday, winds will generally become easterly at 10 knots from Kaktovik to Utqiagvik down to Wainwright. And then as we drop through the lower Chukchi Sea, kind of a mixed bag of winds until we get passing through the Bering Strait and to the north side of St. Lawrence Island. We do expect on Saturday winds to be out of the north around 15 knots, and where there are any openings in the ice, we could maybe see a foot or two of wave action there.